Here's a way to keep your chairlift rides during lessons productive and fun. It's a novel approach to teaching the responsibility code. A remote control with a big red stop button balancing on a head that turns to the right and bumps into a rope with a knot tied in it, and a stop sign underneath that gets struck by a microscope, which has a bright green high heel shoe overflowing with down feathers and a pair of binoculars pointing upwards on the toe with a yield sign balancing on it, and it kicks a vice grip with a letter D, and they bounce down the runway and smash into a post box stuffed with black and yellow warning signs that it can't close, and the red flag on the side has a blue pry bar loading a brain onto a chairlift that rides up, unloads, and slides into a safe. What it is a memory technique that fires up the imagination and taps into creativity. What you do is you describe objects and ask your group to memorize them visually, internally, and encourage them to really blow it up, exaggerate it, add color, add action. It follows that the more preposterous it is, the more bizarre it is, the easier it should be for them to repeat it to you and remember it. Then once they have that down, you explain how that relates to the responsibility code. So here's a demonstration. Picture this: a remote control with a big red stop button on it. That is balancing on a head that turns slowly to the right. The head bumps into a rope with a knot tied in it. At the bottom of that rope is a stop sign. And that stop sign is being struck by a microscope. When you look down into the microscope, you see a bright green high heel shoe, and there are white down feathers overflowing from it. On the toes of the high heel shoe is a pair of binoculars pointing upwards, and balancing on those binoculars is a triangular yield sign. That high heel shoe kicks a vice grip that's holding the letter D, and they go bouncing down a runway. At the end of the runway, they smash into a post box, which is stuffed so full of black and yellow warning signs that it cannot close. The red flag on the side of the post box has a blue pry bar attached to it. And that pry bar is loading a brain onto a chairlift. It rides up the chairlift, unloads, and slides down into a bank safe. At this point, they'll be wondering, what is this about? Well, each object that you describe to them represents either the words or the concepts of the code. The first object is a remote control with a stop button on it. Control, stop. And the first point of our code is always stay in control and be able to stop or avoid other people or objects. That remote control is balancing on a head which turns to the right. Ahead, right. People ahead of you have the right of way, and it is your responsibility to avoid them. When that head turns right, it bumps into a rope with a knot tied in it, a stop sign hanging off the bottom of it, which is struck by a microscope. Knot, stop, struck. In the microscope, well, what do you do with that? You look into it from above. So when you put it together, you must not stop where you obstruct a trail or you are not visible from above. Inside that microscope is the bright green high heel shoe with the down feathers flowing off it. On the toes is the binoculars pointing upwards and a yield sign balancing on it. Down feathers, high heel. Down, heel. Downhill. Binoculars you look into, they're pointing upwards, looking up. And then the yield sign. So when you put that together, it's whenever starting downhill or merging into a trail, look uphill and yield to others. That shoe is kicking a vice grip that's holding the letter D, and they bounce down a runway. Vice, D, device. Runway, run away. Always use devices to help prevent runaway equipment. When that vice grip gets to the end of the runway, it smashes into a post box, which is full of black and yellow warning signs, and it can't close. Post, warning, signs, close. Observe all posted signs and warnings. Keep off closed trails and out of closed areas. On the side, that flag has a blue pry bar attached to it, and that's loading a brain onto a chairlift. It rides, unloads, and slides into a safe. Pry, the brain in this case represents knowledge, and then safe at the end. So, prior to using any lift, you must have the knowledge and ability to load, ride, and unload safely. Have a bit of fun with it. Ask them to repeat it back to you incrementally until they have the whole chain memorized. Then reveal to them one by one the points of the code. By the time you've done a few laps up and down the mountain, not only will they know the code, but they would have had a bit of a giggle learning how to remember it. Use this memory technique to add some variety to your lessons. Help your group know the code and ultimately make the mountain a safer place for everybody.